When I was 3 or 4, I know I was 4 at least. By the time I was 4, I was doing something pretty regularly. Now, I grew up in a Roman Catholic family, and so we went to church every Sunday. And I know my mom took me to the communion rail, although, of course, I didn't get communion. I was too young. But I would come home, and I would get some books from the bookshelf. And I would start building things. And I would put this in the hallway, because the hallway was tall, like churches are tall. And I would make a little table, and I would get scrap fabric from my mom's sewing room and cover it up. And I would go in the kitchen, and I would get water in the little pitcher that we used for salad dressing, and that would go on there. And there would be a glass I would have to take from a cabinet. Sometimes I didn't put that on the altar, because I know that the cup goes there, and there has to be a book open on the top of it. And I couldn't read the books, so I didn't know what they said. But this one has a picture of women saints sitting around a table. I can't read it, it's in Japanese, but I wouldn't have known that when I was 4. Then I would go into the kitchen and get a plate and a piece of white bread, and I'd use the cup and cut out a piece so that it was round. And I'd put this away to eat later because we don't want to waste it. It's good bread. And then I knew that there were things that you had to do. You have to get right up to the table, and you put your hands up, and you whisper. I don't know exactly what the priest whispers, but I knew you were supposed to whisper things. So I whispered things like, "This is fun to do, and I like the color of the fabric, and I wonder if the bread is going to taste different today." And then I would pick up the cup and pour water in it. I couldn't open the refrigerator, so I couldn't get anything else. But eventually, when I was about 6, figured out that they mix things. There's 2 things that get poured in, and one of them is yellow. So when I was about 6, I started adding honey. It's pretty good. That's pretty good stuff. And then you pick up the piece of round bread, and you hold it way up with both hands, and you tear it in pieces. And then you put it back on the plate, and you eat a piece of it. You only eat one piece of it. This is potato bread. It's pretty good. And you drink a little bit from the cup. And then you talk some more. And it's all whispery. And then you put your head down. And then you take all this stuff and you go down to the altar rail and give it away to other people. But I didn't have that. When I had 2 little brothers, they didn't really, I tried to teach them how to be altar servers. They weren't interested. I did this until I was about 9 or 10. And then we were in Bangkok, and I went to a Catholic school for 4th grade and 5th grade and 6th grade. And I learned that the church loves vocations for women. They think women are wonderful. We should have women in the church. All the nuns taught me this. And I learned that from my parents. I had learned for years, girls can do anything. Do not let people tell you you can't do something. By the time you're a grown-up, women can do anything. And then I knew I was a priest. God said so. There wasn't any question about that. But when I was in Catholic school in Bangkok, all of a sudden, it became very clear that that wasn't true. None of it was true. And the universe came apart, and it was all gone. Nothing was true anymore. So for about 20 years, I lived with a very unstable universe. When I was 30, I was in a Methodist church in Oklahoma, and this lady who was in the congregation suddenly got up one Sunday morning and started to preach. And I was like, what the hell? Where'd that come from? And that's when it dawned on me that when people said she was going to seminary, she was training to become a minister. And this little light bulb went off in my head, and this little voice that I hadn't heard in a long time said, God never said Catholic priest. And that began the 10-year argument with God about whether I was too old, is this too late, I'm married, I'm looking at a career possibility, But when I was 40, I started seminary. It's been a long time since then. The thing is, my life is actually in a very interesting place here. The United Methodist Church started ordaining women about the time I was born. They are still less than half the ministers in the Methodist Church. Last year is not 2020, in 2019, the Church of England, for the first time, got their ordination equivalent deacons, their lowest ordination level. They have 3 levels of ordination. And their lowest level is the deacons, and everybody's a deacon, even though they get ordained to higher levels. They finally got to 51% women. First time. The only 2 denominations in the United States that are at 50% men and women for ordained clergy are the United Church of Christ and the Unitarian Universalist Association. Big surprise, those are the 2 denominations that have the longest history of ordaining women. They started in the 1840s and 1850s. It's just bizarre that it would take that long to get to parity. And that's only in those 2 denominations. Nationwide in the United States, there are fewer than 40% women clergy. In most cases, in many denominations, fewer than 20%. In 2 denominations, the 2 largest religious groups in the United States, the Roman Catholics and the Southern Baptists, do not ordain women at all. Once upon a time, for a period of about 10 years, the Southern Baptists did this grand experiment where they ordained women. One of those women was running a pastoral training program, and I was interviewed for the program, and I wasn't really coming in as a Christian at that point. I was coming in as a Unitarian. And they interviewed me in such a way as to make it absolutely impossible for them to accept me into the program. It was more brutal than anything I'd ever had described to me. And afterwards, one of the clergymen who ripped me to shreds and didn't put me back together again, he came and found me in the parking lot to tell me that they couldn't take me into the program because their boss, the ordained Baptist woman, would be attacked for it, and her ordination status was in jeopardy because she was a woman and a Southern Baptist. And he wanted me to know that I had done very well, that I had done brilliantly, that they would love to have me in the program if only I were a more conventional Christian. All these books. Tandeka is ordained in the Unitarian Universalist Association. Sandra Lee Dixon is a woman historian of early Christianity. Soul Work, this is edited by 2 women. Anti-Racist Theologies in Dialogue. Woman Guides, this is pretty early. Rosemary Radford Ruther is a Catholic woman who wrote great theology. Lots of it. There's a picture in here of a crucified woman. Sally McFaig writes Ecology and Ecological Ethics. She's also a great theologian. Beyond God the Father, now this is Mary Daly. Mary Daly was an insanely crazy, evocative, creative woman theologian. Honoring the Body by Stephanie Paulsell's Meditations on Christian Practice and How It Affects Embodiment. These 2 women are crazy people, and I love them dearly. Rita Nakashima Brock and Rebecca Ann Parker. Parker is was president of a Unitarian seminary for a while. Both of them have stories to tell in a wonderful book called Proverbs of Ashes, which is their theological autobiography about surviving abuse, different kinds of abuse. People get focused on the sexual abuse. One of them underwent and survived, and forget about the cultural and ethnic abuse that the other one survived, which is, they're both really interesting comparisons. Saving Paradise is their book about how Christianity went from an idea of Jesus as pastor to an idea of Jesus as emperor, and how it went from an idea of Jesus' resurrection as the important part of salvation to the idea of Jesus' crucifixion as the important part of salvation. The thing is that when Christianity became the religion of the empire in 324, it actually became the religion of the army. And so, the Christians understood that they'd gone from being persecuted. 10 minutes later, they're the religion of the army. Well, this is an emperor. If he wants to upend the world, he can do it. And he can also upend it the other way any minute. So they had to keep the emperor happy. So when he stuck all the bishops in a big room in Nicaea and said, "You will make up a creed. I don't care what it says, but everybody who says they're a Christian has to be able to say the same thing." They made up a creed. We still say the Nicene Creed in some places. The making Christianity the religion of the army meant they had to find a way for the religion to inspire people to go and die for the emperor. That kind of messed up Christian theology a lot. But all along the way, women were part of it. They just couldn't be in charge. Paul writes to women. All his churches are little house churches. Guess who takes care of the house? So Paul writes to the women. But they aren't running things according to modern theology. They were then. The desert fathers and desert mothers suddenly become kind of just the desert fathers. Over time, after we become imperial, it becomes more important that we get men to go die for the empire, and women become less important than they had been. It takes a while, but eventually women become unimportant entirely. We're not really fully human in some ways. It's taking a long time for us to be human again. We are servants at the table, but the problem with the idea of servants is that it's a hierarchical idea. It's still imperial in structure. Servers, or serving, is an action. Servant is a class. We're still working at it. We're still working at it. We are welcome, but we're welcome into an institution that's still very masculine. The kinds of robes that ministers used to wear, they look a lot like graduation robes, right? Well, they're basically medieval university robes. Those robes have been used since universities were founded in the Middle Ages. And they were founded and built, and those robes are designed for the male body, which has a pretty flat chest. Female bodies generally don't, but not always. But we've still taken a long time to find a way to make clerical robes for women that don't look like they're wearing their father's graduation robe. We still haven't figured out how to make graduation robes for women. Go figure that one. We're struggling all the time to be equal. And we struggle in part because we are different. We have different bodies than men. We are complementary. And understand, I'm being incredibly gender binary right now. There are actually wonderful different kinds of bodies that are not entirely male or female in the cisgendered sense. We're having to struggle with that part too. It's interesting that the more a profession becomes female dominant, the less it has social status and the less it has the lower the pay gets. Teachers used to be men. And then when women could teach little children and eventually more children, the profession of teacher became less respected and less well paid. Nursing was a female profession. It was invented literally by Florence Nightingale. And as a profession it was. And it was not a terribly well paid profession. But as men have gotten into it, which happened mostly after the Korean War, when a lot of corpsmen came back and said, I don't want to be a doctor, but I want to practice in medicine. And so now we have more and more male nurses, and we have a greater demand for nursing because it's such an important skill in medicine. Now the money's going up a little bit. It's interesting how that works. Follow the money may also mean follow the genitalia. We don't know yet. The problem we're facing is that we don't know how to incorporate difference with equality. There's a whole variety of feminism called equity feminism, which is not about making everybody exactly the same, because we're not. Not all men are the same. Not all women are the same. Not all trans people are the same. Not all anybody is the same. A group is a group of individuals. But we're trying to find a way to do equity, which means everybody gets what they need to have the same opportunities. We're still working on it. It's crazy making. But right now, it still feels an awful lot, especially in the church, where I have no table and no pulpit, that we are left with bread and water. Amen.